Purple is a late blooming color. Purple is a late blooming color. I know because I watched the colors bloom. The thing about radically simplifying your life is you have time to visit the flowers every day. Every day I walked the same path, and at some point, the flowers began to bloom. I realized why there was so much written about spring and so much written about flowers. Because have you seen the audacity of the early blooming flowers? Do you see the energy with which they burst forth out into a world still half bathed in winter? A world with a palette of stale sticks and dry bones, and at best, moments of deep forest green. The audacity of early blooming flowers. They do not bother to creep up on you. How could they when you walk the same path every day? You would have noticed. One still morning, they just appear, covered in dew, faces turned up towards the sun in salutation, sprung up as if winter never occurred at all. It is almost naive to be grateful for them, because their presence screams, as if I ever left. What must it feel like to be so bold in your being that one is forced to question whether there was ever being without you in the first place? I'm so shocked by the audacity of the early blooming flowers that I have no choice but to stare. I still remain too awestruck to know whether or not they are, in fact, a dream. They are then replaced by the fragility of the cherry blossom, a beauty so delicate, so fleeting, so engrossing, that you cannot help but be brought to tears. Much has been written about her too, so I will keep it brief. All I will say is that I'm not sure which is preferred. Her petals as they bud from their pink capsule, as they lay on the grass, as if from ground instead of tree, or as they float down like snowflakes in transition from the former to the latter. For 8 weeks, I've watched the flowers. I've watched them every day. I might cry with the kelp, but I rejoice with the flowers. As I visit them, I feel my heart blossom with the naive audacity of joy. How dare I? Me, that should have semi-permanent winter of smoke and dry bones and a wish for a moment of deep forest green. But I do, I rejoice. I am a flower after all, and my purpose is to blossom. I visit the flowers every day, and so I have noticed purple is a late blooming color. I know this because I've watched the colors bloom, but little has been written about this fact. The thing is, the flowers were done. They were over. A grayness had settled in over spring, and the twinkle of leaves, while present, had lost its magic, and I was relegated to purchasing cut sunflowers from the store on the corner, willing them to have the audacity of the flowers I remember, and then remembering they are just cut sunflowers, purchased from the store on the corner. Truthfully, my spirit has been weak, and I have needed the memory of boldness of the early bloom and its sharp contrast to winter to remember that I, too, can burst forward in a spring of color despite everything. The path I walk every day has begun to dry, and while my heart remembered its prior joy, it seemed to fade in slow motion, like the snowflakes of the cherry blossom tree, in transition closer to the ground than to the bud. The magic seemed to die. And while I still had a sort of hope, it was a sad sort of stillness. But quietly, purple has begun to puncture my path, emerging from shrubs that I thought were but fillers for the empty space along the paved pathways, trees that I did not imagine could bloom. Purple has sprouted from the weeds in the cracks of my sidewalk and through the tips of the holes of my chain link fence. I had already surrendered my spring to the next season. I thanked it and I bid it goodbye, grateful for the brief period of rebirth, ready for the dry spell of summer, which is just winter with fewer clothes. I held the memory of my joy, thinking the audacity of the early blooming flower was all that I was allowed to have, being careful not to grasp it too tight, lest the memory fade away. I thought I did not deserve more spring, not me, etched of smoke and dry bones, not me, who was shocked to be allowed to touch the spring at all. But purple is a late blooming color. Purple is a late blooming color. Purple is a late blooming color, and spring is still here.